In times of conflict, survival or wilderness living, a fire is far more than warmth. It's the difference between a cold meal and a hot one, between vulnerability and morale, between surviving the night or succumbing to exposure. Throughout history, from soldiers on campaign to homesteaders and survivalists today, the field stove has been one of the simplest yet most vital inventions. But making one yourself is not always as straightforward as it seems. Too many people rush into building a stove from whatever they can find, only to discover that what they've made smokes too much, wastes fuel, collapses after a few burns, or even becomes a fire hazard. Before diving into exactly what goes wrong, let's set the stage. Soldiers in both world wars improvised countless heating and cooking solutions, from the Tommy cooker of the British trenches to improvised tin can burners cobbled together by German or Soviet troops. Survivalists today still turn to these same methods, adapting the lessons learned in history to modern situations. But if those lessons are ignored, mistakes repeat themselves. Let's walk through the most common errors people make when building a DIY field stove, and how to avoid them, so you can create something efficient, safe and reliable when it truly matters. The biggest mistake is choosing the wrong container or material. The first and most damaging mistake comes down to what you build your stove from. Soldiers in the field often had nothing more than empty fuel cans, ration tins, or discarded metal drums to work with. But not every piece of scrap metal is safe to use. Thin aluminum or light tin will burn through quickly, collapse under heat, or even release toxic fumes depending on its coating. During World War II, many soldiers learned the hard way that repurposed containers treated with fuel or chemicals could make food cooked over them dangerous. For a durable and functional field stove, the container must be strong enough to withstand repeated heating cycles without warping. Steel cans, old ammunition boxes, or heavy-duty cookware were often prized for this reason. Using the wrong material is not just inefficient, it can cut short the life of your stove to just 1 or 2 uses, and in some cases create serious health risks. Poor airflow design is what ruins most stoves before they even start. The second major error comes from misunderstanding how fire behaves. Fire requires oxygen, and without a steady and controlled flow of air, even the best-built stove will struggle. Many people, cut too few air holes, or they place them in the wrong position, leaving their stove to smoulder rather than burn clean. Historical accounts from soldiers describe stoves that smoked up entire dugouts or camps because of this simple oversight. A good field stove works on the principle of a chimney effect. Fresh air must enter from the bottom to feed the flames, while smoke and gases escape through a top vent or flue. Without this design, wood burns incompletely, creating both thick smoke and wasted fuel. This mistake was so common that during the Second World War, some units actually distributed simple guides on how to cut and vent cans to create a so-called smokeless stove. Getting airflow right is, honestly, the difference between a functional stove and a smoky mess that gives away your position or ruins your meal. Making the stove too large or too heavy defeats the purpose. Another classic mistake is overbuilding. When people attempt a do-it-yourself stove, they often think bigger means better, but in the field, portability and efficiency are what matter. Large, heavy stoves consume more fuel than necessary, take longer to heat up, and are almost impossible to transport discreetly. Soldiers and survivalists needed stoves that could be carried by hand, set up quickly, and fueled with whatever scraps of wood or brush were at hand. Neglecting fuel choice will make even a well-built stove useless. Even if the design is solid, choosing the wrong fuel turns a good stove into a failure. One of the greatest mistakes people make is trying to burn wet wood, green branches, or materials coated in chemicals. Not only do these choices create excessive smoke, they also clog stoves with tar and residue, making them harder to reuse. Soldiers in the trenches often scavenged anything that would burn, including painted wood and refuse. But these produced choking fumes and fouled the limited space around them. Dry twigs, small branches, and even agricultural byproducts like dried husks or straw were historically prized as ideal fuels. The key was finding something that lit easily, burned hot, and left minimal residue. Forgetting stability and safety turns stoves into hazards. The field stove is meant to be practical, but when constructed hastily, it often becomes unstable or unsafe. In history, makeshift stoves frequently tipped over, spilling hot ash, igniting canvas tents, or burning those unlucky enough to be nearby. This mistake remains common today in survival circles where people stack rocks or balance pots precariously over an open flame. Failing to manage smoke and visibility could give you away. For civilians, smoke may be a nuisance. For soldiers in the field, it could be a death sentence. One of the greatest mistakes was failing to manage smoke, which made positions visible to enemy aircraft or scouts. In both world wars, many soldiers were killed after careless cooking fires revealed their locations. Overlooking long-term durability limits a stove's usefulness. Finally, the last mistake is assuming a field stove only needs to work once. In emergencies, that may be enough, but history shows that campaigns stretched on for weeks or months, and soldiers depended on reliable gear. A stove that cracks after a few burns, rusts quickly, or clogs with soot is of little value. This is why experienced fighters and survivalists sought out strong materials, cleaned their stoves regularly, and maintained them for repeated use. Field stoves are a fascinating blend of history, survival, and human ingenuity. They remind us that even in the harshest conditions, people have always sought ways to bring warmth, cook food, and preserve a sense of normalcy. But just as history is full of clever inventions, it is also full of hard lessons learned from mistakes. Choosing the wrong materials, ignoring airflow, overbuilding, neglecting fuel, creating unstable designs, failing to manage smoke, and overlooking durability are the errors that ruined countless stoves for soldiers and survivalists alike. If you want more serious explorations of forgotten survival skills, wartime innovations, and the lessons they still hold for us today, subscribe to In the Beginning. Share this with others who respect the craft of survival and the history behind it. The past continues to teach us how to live smarter, tougher, and better prepared.